The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the occasional shuffle of papers. Jacob Carter leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The fluorescent lights above cast a pale glow over the table, making everyone look tired. Across from him, Lyra Voss sat stiffly, her hands clasped tightly together. She was young, too young, some said, but smart. Everyone had hoped she could bridge the gap between humanity and the Caliph. So far, it hadn't worked. At the far end of the table, Christopher Blake crossed his arms. His uniform was crisp, but his face was hard. His jaw clenched like he was ready to snap at any moment. He wasn't a diplomat. He was a soldier, and soldiers didn't have much patience for talk when they thought action was needed. On the screen in front of them, Zorath's image flickered slightly. The Caliph leader looked almost human, with smooth skin and sharp features, but his eyes were strange, too bright, too unreadable. "You accuse us without proof," Zorath said, his voice calm but firm. "We do not respond well to threats." Blake leaned forward, slamming his hand on the table. "Don't play games with us. We know you've been moving weapons closer to our border. What else are we supposed to think?" Lyra winced at the sudden noise. She glanced at Jacob, who gave her an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, she spoke up. "Commander Blake, accusing them outright won't help. Let's focus on finding a solution." Her voice trembled a little, but she kept going. "Zorath, can you explain why your forces are near the border? If there's a misunderstanding, we can clear it up." Zorath tilted his head, studying her. For a moment, no one said anything. Then he replied, "Our movements are routine. You humans see danger where none exists. Perhaps if you trusted us more, this would not be an issue." "Trust," Blake snorted. "After everything that's happened, you expect us to trust you." Jacob sighed heavily. This wasn't going anywhere. Every time they tried to make progress, someone pushed back too hard. It felt like they were all speaking different languages, even though translators were working overtime to keep things clear. Something wasn't right. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the tension in the room was thicker than ever. "We need transparency," Lyra insisted, trying to steer the conversation back on track. "If you share your plans, we can reassure our people." "And what about your transparency?" Zorath interrupted, his tone sharper now. "Your ships patrol closer to our territory every day. Are we supposed to believe this is coincidence?" Blake stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "That's it. Enough talking. Either you pull back your forces, or we'll take matters into our own hands." The room fell silent. Even the faint hum of the machines seemed to fade away. Lyra stared at Blake, horrified. Jacob closed his eyes, shaking his head. They had come so close to finding common ground, but now it felt like everything was crumbling. Zorath's expression darkened. "Be careful, human. Threats will only bring war. Is that what you truly want?" Blake didn't answer. Instead, he turned and stormed out of the room, leaving behind a trail of unease. Lyra sank into her seat, feeling defeated. Jacob reached over and placed a hand on hers. "It's not over yet," he whispered. But deep down, they both knew the peace talks had failed. Now, the realm awaited humanity's next move. Back on Earth, General Ryan Hughes sat in his office, staring at a stack of reports piled high on his desk. The dim light from a single lamp cast long shadows across the room. He looked tired, his face lined with stress. But there was no time to rest. Lieutenant Alina Meyer stood nearby, holding a tablet filled with data. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Sir, I've analyzed the intel," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to say. "It seems not all Caliph factions are hostile. Some groups oppose Zorath's leadership." Hughes frowned, leaning back in his chair. "Are you saying we should trust them, after everything that's happened?" "No, sir," Alina replied quickly. "But it might be worth exploring. If we can find allies within their ranks, it could change the game." Hughes shook his head. We don't have time for maze. Diplomacy has failed. It's clear now. They're planning something big. We need to act first. Alina bit her lip but didn't argue further. Instead, she turned her attention to another piece of information she'd uncovered. There's more, sir. Someone tampered with the translation devices during the talks. Miscommunications between us and the Caliph weren't accidental. Hughes raised an eyebrow. Sabotage. By whom? That's what I'm trying to figure out, Alina admitted. Whoever did it wanted to make sure negotiations fell apart. Before Hughes could respond, there was a knock at the door. A young soldier stepped in, saluting sharply. General, Ambassador Lyra Voss is here. She says it's urgent. Hughes waved him off. Send her in. Lyra entered moments later, looking disheveled. Her usually neat hair was slightly messy, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She glanced at Alina, then focused on Hughes. I think someone's working against us, she blurted out. Someone who doesn't want peace. Hughes gestured for her to sit. Go on. I spoke with Daniel Quinn, Lyra explained. He's a journalist covering the crisis. He believes someone leaked classified details to the Caliph, not to help them, but to provoke war. Alina's eyes widened. That matches what I found. Someone sabotaged the translators and leaked info. But why? To start a war, Hughes said grimly. Whoever it is wants conflict, plain and simple. Lyra leaned forward, desperation in her voice. If we can prove this, maybe we can stop it. Maybe we can still salvage diplomacy. Hughes sighed, rubbing his temples. It's too late for that. Preparations for a strike are already underway. Admiral Dawson is leading the fleet as we speak. Alina exchanged a worried glance with Lyra. Neither woman seemed convinced that war was inevitable or right. As they left the office, Alina pulled Lyra aside. We need to dig deeper. If we expose whoever's behind this, we might have a chance. Lyra nodded slowly. But where do we start? With Major Aaron Cole, Alina said quietly. He's connected to intelligence operations. If anyone knows something, it's him. Later that evening, Alina tracked down Major Cole in a quiet corner of the base cafeteria. He sat alone, sipping coffee, his expression distant. When she approached, he looked up, startled. Lieutenant Meyer, he said cautiously. What brings you here? I need answers, Alina said bluntly. About the leaks. About the sabotage. Cole hesitated, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. Finally, he sighed. All right, but not here. They moved to an empty storage room, where Cole confessed reluctantly. I leaked some information, he admitted, but only because I thought it would scare both sides into backing down. I never wanted war. Alina stared at him, stunned. Before she could respond, alarms blared through the base. Someone had discovered her investigation, and they weren't happy. Cole grabbed her arm. You need to leave. Now. As Alina fled, she realized the stakes were higher than ever. Whoever was pulling the strings wouldn't stop until humanity and the Caliph clashed. And time was running out. Alina ran down the narrow corridor, her heart pounding in her chest. Behind her, heavy footsteps echoed. Someone was following her. She ducked into an alcove, pressing herself against the cold metal wall as two soldiers rushed past. Their boots clanged loudly on the floor, but they didn't see her. Taking a shaky breath, she pulled out her communicator and sent a quick message to Jacob Carter. I need help. They're onto me. Minutes later, Jacob arrived, his face pale but determined. He had always been the calm one, the negotiator who could talk his way out of anything. But now, even he looked worried. What happened? He asked quietly. I found Major Cole, Alina whispered. He admitted to leaking information, but it wasn't to start a war. Someone else is pulling the strings. Whoever it is, they know I'm onto them. Jacob nodded grimly. We can't stay here. If they catch you, we lose our chance to expose this. They hurried to a hidden docking bay where Maya Torres waited with a small transport ship. Mia was short and wiry, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She leaned casually against the hull, chewing gum as if she didn't have a care in the world. When she saw Jacob and Elena approaching, she raised an eyebrow. "Trouble? You could say that," Jacob replied. "Can you get us off-world?" Mia smirked. "Of course I can. Just tell me where we're going." Elena explained quickly about the Caliph dissidents, a group of rebels who opposed Zoreth's leadership. According to intercepted messages, they were willing to meet secretly in a neutral zone. If anyone could broker a new alliance, it was them. "Neutral zone, huh?" Mia muttered, climbing into the pilot's seat. "Sounds like fun. Let's hope your friends don't shoot first and ask questions later." The journey was tense. The transport ship wasn't built for stealth, and they had to dodge patrols from both human and Caliph forces. At one point, a fighter jet buzzed dangerously close, its weapons locked onto their vessel. Mia cursed under her breath, weaving through debris fields to shake it off. "Hold on tight," she shouted as the ship jolted violently. Jacob gripped the edge of his seat, while Elena clenched her fists, trying not to scream. Finally, they'd reached the designated coordinates, a barren asteroid field floating in the middle of nowhere. A single Caliph cruiser awaited them, its sleek design gleaming faintly in the starlight. As they docked, Jacob turned to Elena. "This is it. If we mess this up, there's no turning back." Aboard the cruiser, they were greeted by Thelos, the leader of the rebel faction. Unlike Zoreth, Thelos had a rugged appearance, his armor scratched and worn from years of fighting. His piercing gaze scanned them carefully before he spoke. "You're risking much to come here, humans. Why should I trust you?" Jacob stepped forward, meeting Thelos' stare. "Because we share the same enemy. Someone is manipulating both our peoples, pushing us toward war. If we don't stop them, everyone loses." Thelos studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. Tell me what you know." As Elena began sharing her findings, Thelos listened intently. Occasionally, he interrupted with sharp questions, testing their knowledge. By the end of the briefing, his expression had softened slightly. "If what you say is true, then Zoreth must be stopped. But proving it won't be easy." "We'll do whatever it takes," Jacob said firmly. Thelos smirked, though there was no humor in it. "Good, because the hardest part is yet to come." Back aboard the transport, Mia glanced at the group. "So, do we have a plan, or are we just winging it?" "We have a plan," Jacob replied, though his voice lacked confidence. "But it's going to be dangerous." Mia grinned. "Dangerous is my specialty." As the ship drifted away from the asteroid field, none of them realized how close they were to uncovering a conspiracy that could change the fate of both humanity and the Caliph forever, or how deadly the truth might be. The transport ship rocked violently as another blast hit its side. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered ominously. Maya Torres gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white. "Hold on," she shouted over the noise. "This isn't exactly how I planned my day." Jacob Carter braced himself against the wall, trying to stay upright as the ship shuddered again. Elena Meyer clutched a console, her face pale but determined. They had been ambushed just moments after leaving the asteroid field. 3 human fighters closing in fast. Whoever wanted to silence them clearly wasn't taking chances. "Can you lose them?" Jacob yelled, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Mia grinned despite the danger. "Watch and learn, old man." With a quick flick of switches, she activated the ship's cloaking device, making it momentarily invisible to enemy sensors. The pursuing fighters hesitated, their pilots scanning the empty space where the transport had been. Taking advantage of the confusion, Mia pushed the engines to maximum speed, weaving through nearby debris fields until they were out of range. Once the coast was clear, she slumped back in her seat, letting out a long breath. Well, that was fun. Elena shook her head, still gripping the console for support. "We can't keep running like this. They'll find us eventually. And if they do, Jacob added grimly, "It won't just be us who pays the price. If we don't stop whoever's behind this, both humanity and the Caliph are doomed." Back in the main cabin, Fellows leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing thoughtfully. He hadn't said much since boarding the transport, but now he spoke up. "You humans talk too much about what will happen if you fail. What matters is what you're doing now. Tell me your plan." Elena exchanged a glance with Jacob before turning to Thelos. "Zoreth is planning something big, a massive attack disguised as retaliation. If we can intercept his communications, we might find proof of his intentions. That would give your rebels leverage to challenge him, and maybe even prevent war." Thelos nodded slowly. "A good idea, but risky. Intercepting Zoreth's messages won't be easy. His network is heavily guarded." "We've got no other choice," Jacob said firmly. "If we don't try, we've already lost." They decided to head to a remote outpost on the edge of Caliph territory, a place rumored to house key communication arrays. It was dangerous. The area was crawling with loyalist forces, but it was also their best shot at gathering the evidence they needed. As the ship approached, Mia expertly guided it into a hidden alcove, masking its presence from prying eyes. Under the cover of darkness, the group disembarked, moving cautiously toward the outpost. The air was thick with tension, every shadow seeming to hide an unseen threat. Fellows led the way, his movements silent and precise. Behind him, Jacob and Elena followed closely, their weapons ready but hoping not to use them. Inside the outpost, they split up. Fellows and Mia worked on disabling security systems while Jacob and Elena searched for the communication logs. The room was dimly lit, filled with blinking screens and humming equipment. Elena's fingers flew over the keyboard as she decrypted files, her focus absolute. "Got it," she whispered triumphantly after several tense minutes. But their victory was short-lived. A sudden alarm pierced the silence, red lights flashing across the walls. "We've been spotted," Fellows growled, rushing back into the room. Mia cursed under her breath. "Time to go." They sprinted toward the exit, dodging blasts from loyalist guards who had begun to swarm the area. Just as they reached the transport ship, another wave of enemies appeared, blocking their path. For a moment, it looked hopeless. But then Thelos stepped forward, raising his weapon defiantly. "I'll hold them off," he said, his voice steady. "Get the data to my people. Do whatever it takes to stop Zoreth." "No," Elena protested. "We're not leaving you." "There's no time to argue," Thelos snapped. "Go." Reluctantly, the others climbed aboard the ship as Thelos fired a volley of shots, buying them precious seconds. As the transport lifted off, Jacob watched through the window, his jaw clenched. Thelos stood alone, surrounded by enemies, refusing to back down. When they were safely away, Elena sank into her seat, clutching the data drive tightly. "He gave us a chance," she murmured. "We can't waste it." Jacob nodded, his expression grim. "Then let's make sure his sacrifice means something." As the ship sped toward Earth, none of them knew what awaited them next, but they were certain of one thing. The fight for peace had only just begun. The moment the transport ship touched down on Earth, Jacob Carter and Elena Meyer knew they were running out of time. News of the failed peace talks had spread like wildfire, and public opinion was shifting dangerously. Protesters filled the streets, demanding answers from their leaders, while others called for immediate retaliation against the Caliph. The atmosphere was tense, a powder keg waiting to explode. Elena wasted no time. She rushed to Earth Command with the data drive, hoping to show General Ryan Hughes the intercepted communications that proved Zoreth's true intentions. But when she arrived, she found the general surrounded by advisors, all poring over tactical maps and deployment plans. Hughes looked up briefly, his face hard and unyielding. "What is it now, Lieutenant?" "I have proof," Elena said quickly, holding up the drive. "Zoreth isn't just retaliating. He's planning a full-scale assault on our orbital defenses. If we act now, we can stop him." Hughes frowned but didn't take the drive. Even if this is true, it changes nothing. Admiral Dawson is already leading the fleet toward the realm. Orders are orders. But sir, Elena started, her voice rising in frustration. No, Hughes interrupted sharply. We're past diplomacy. War is inevitable. Jacob stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. General, war won't solve anything. If you launch an attack without hearing us out, you'll be playing right into someone else's hands. Someone who wants this conflict. Hughes hesitated, glancing between them. For a brief moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. But then he shook his head. I don't have the luxury of second-guessing myself. The fleet moves at dawn. Frustrated and desperate, Elena turned to Lyra Voss, who had been working tirelessly to rally support for peace. Together, they decided to go public. Using Daniel Quinn's connections, they arranged for a live broadcast to air directly to millions of households across Earth. It was risky. If they couldn't convince people, they'd only make things worse. That evening, Lyra stood before the camera, her hands trembling slightly but her voice steady. People of Earth, I know you're scared. I am too. But war isn't the answer. What we've discovered proves that this conflict has been manipulated from the start. There are those among the Caliph who want peace as much as we do. All we ask is a chance to build trust instead of fear. As Lyra spoke, Daniel played footage of the intercepted transmissions, showing Zorath's aggressive plans alongside evidence of sabotage within Earth's own ranks. The screen cut to images of Thelos and his rebels, standing united against tyranny. By the end of the broadcast, social media erupted with reactions. Some praised Lyra's courage. Others dismissed her as naive. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship Eclipse *, Admiral Paul Dawson prepared for battle. He hadn't seen the broadcast. Communications were restricted during maneuvers, but rumors reached him through the crew. Among them was Daniel Quinn, who had stowed away to document the truth. Sneaking through the ship's corridors, Daniel managed to access classified files revealing Major Aaron Cole's involvement in the sabotage. Armed with this new information, he recorded a message and sent it directly to Earth Command. Back on Earth, General Hughes watched Daniel's footage in stunned silence. The pieces finally clicked into place. The leaks, the mistranslations, the push for war. It had all been orchestrated. Someone powerful wanted humanity and the Caliph to destroy each other. But even as Hughes grappled with the revelation, the first shots of the battle rang out above the realm. The human fleet clashed with the Caliph armada, lighting up the sky with explosions. Amid the chaos, Jacob and Elena worked frantically to relay the truth to Admiral Dawson, hoping it wasn't too late to pull back. For better or worse, humanity's next move would decide the fate of two species, and there was no turning back. The battle above the realm was chaos. Explosions lit up the dark void of space, and ships from both sides twisted and turned, firing relentlessly. The human fleet, led by Admiral Paul Dawson aboard the Eclipse *, fought fiercely, but the Caliph armada was equally determined. Debris floated everywhere, remnants of destroyed vessels, as pilots on both sides struggled to survive. Inside the Eclipse *, alarms blared constantly. Admiral Dawson stood on the bridge, his face grim as he watched the tactical display. The situation was dire. The Caliph forces were gaining ground, pushing closer to Earth's orbital defenses. But then a message came through, breaking through the noise. It was Jacob Carter's voice, urgent and clear. Admiral, you need to listen. This war is based on lies. Zorath isn't retaliating. He's attacking because someone wanted this conflict. If you stop now, we can still prevent disaster. Dawson hesitated, glancing at his officers. They were all waiting for his command, ready to follow orders no matter what. For a moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. He turned to his communications officer. Patch me through to General Hughes. Seconds later, Hughes's voice crackled over the line. Admiral, we've uncovered evidence of sabotage. Someone manipulated both sides into this fight. If you continue, you'll be playing right into their hands. Dawson clenched his jaw, torn between duty and the growing realization that they might have been wrong all along. Finally, he made his decision. All units, hold fire, he ordered. Stand down and await further instructions. The order rippled through the fleet, and slowly the fighting began to subside. On the Caliph side, Thalas's rebels seized the opportunity. Using the data Alina and Jacob had provided, they broadcast Zorath's plans directly to the Caliph Council, exposing his deception. The council erupted in outrage, and within hours, Zorath's loyalists were stripped of power. Thelos took control, vowing to pursue peace instead of destruction. But even as the immediate threat faded, the cost of the battle became clear. The Eclipse had sustained heavy damage, its hull cracked and smoking. Dozens of smaller ships lay in ruins, drifting silently in the vast emptiness of space. Casualty reports streamed in, each name a reminder of lives lost. Among them was Daniel Quinn, who had stayed aboard the Eclipse to document the truth. His final recording, a plea for humanity and the Caliph to see past their differences, was found on his camera after the ship limped back to Earth. Back on Earth, the mood was somber. People gathered around screens, watching footage of the battle and listening to Daniel's words. Though many mourned the losses, others felt hope stirring. Lyra Voss addressed the crowd outside Earth Command, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. This war was built on fear and mistrust, but it doesn't have to define us. We can choose a better path, one where we work together instead of tearing each other apart. General Hughes stood nearby, his expression unreadable. He had spent years believing in strength through force, but now he saw how fragile that belief truly was. As he watched Lyra speak, he realized that perhaps diplomacy wasn't weakness, it was courage. In the days that followed, tentative steps toward reconciliation began. Thelos sent emissaries to meet with human representatives, including Jacob and Alina, who worked tirelessly to rebuild trust. It wouldn't be easy. Scars ran deep on both sides. But for the first time, there was a chance. As the sun rose over Earth's horizon, Jacob gazed out at the sky, thinking about everything they'd been through. "We're not done yet," he said softly to Alina. "But maybe, just maybe, we've earned another chance." And so, humanity and the Caliph prepared to face an uncertain future together, bound by the fragile promise of coexistence. Months passed, and the scars of the battle above the realm began to heal, slowly, painfully. The wreckage of ships still floated in orbit as a silent reminder of the cost of mistrust. But on Earth and among the Caliph, life moved forward. Both sides had agreed to meet again, not in a war room or aboard a battleship, but on neutral ground. A small, uninhabited moon with nothing but barren plains and endless skies. Jacob Carter stood at the edge of the meeting site, watching as a Caliph shuttle descended gracefully from the sky. Thelos stepped out first, his armor replaced by simpler robes, a sign of humility. Behind him came other Caliph leaders, their expressions cautious but hopeful. On the human side, Lyra Voss stood with General Ryan Hughes and Alina Meyer, all three wearing civilian clothes instead of uniforms, a deliberate choice meant to signal peace. As the two groups approached each other, no one spoke for a moment. Then Thelos broke the silence. "We are here not as enemies, but as survivors. Too much has been lost already." Lyra nodded, her voice steady. "And we are here because we believe it doesn't have to be this way. We can learn from our mistakes." The talks were long and difficult. Old wounds ran deep, and every word carried weight. There were moments when tempers flared, when old fears threatened to resurface. But this time, there was something different, a shared understanding that they couldn't afford failure again. Jacob worked tirelessly alongside Lyra, helping mediate discussions and finding common ground. Alina provided evidence of sabotage and manipulation, showing how both sides had been used as pawns in someone else's game. General Hughes surprised everyone by speaking openly about his own doubts. "I once thought strength came from weapons," he admitted, "but I was wrong. Real strength is knowing when to put them down." By the end of the week, a fragile agreement was reached. It wasn't perfect. There were compromises on both sides, but it was a start. Trade routes would reopen, cultural exchanges would begin, and joint patrols would ensure borders remained peaceful. Most importantly, a council was formed, made up of representatives from both humanity and the Caliph, tasked with addressing disputes before they escalated. Back on Earth, people watched the news with mixed emotions. Some celebrated the agreement, while others remained skeptical. Daniel Quinn's final message was played repeatedly, his words echoing across cities and towns. "Peace isn't something you negotiate," he had said. "It's something you fight for, not with weapons, but with trust." In the weeks that followed, small changes began to take root. Schools started teaching about the Caliph, not as enemies, but as neighbors. Artists painted murals depicting unity, and musicians composed songs inspired by hope. Even Mia Torres, who had helped smuggle Jacob and Elena to safety, joked that maybe she could retire her transport ship, for now. One evening, Jacob found himself standing on a hill overlooking Earth's capital city. Lights twinkled below, and the air smelled clean, almost sweet. He thought about everything they'd been through. The failures, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt, and felt a strange sense of pride. They hadn't fixed everything, but they had taken the first step. Elena joined him after a while, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to him and smiled faintly. "Do you think we'll make it this time?" Jacob took a sip, gazing at the stars. "I don't know, but if we keep trying, I think we have a chance." Far away, on the realm, Fellows looked up at the same sky, wondering what the future held. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel hopeful. The road ahead would be hard, but together, humanity and the Caliph might just find a way to share the galaxy. And so, under the vast expanse of stars, 2 peoples began to rebuild not just their worlds, but themselves.